If you've ever spent your time surfing the interwebs, building a website, or even opening a template for graphic design, you've probably seen these exact words. Lorem ipsum dolosit emet, consectetur adepicing elit. It is in essence the most famous filler text in history. For decades it has sat silently in the background of our digital layout, designed specifically to be completely ignored. It is dummy text, meant to mimic the natural flow and rhythm of human language, without actually saying anything of substance at all. But what happens when you actually pay attention to this? What happens when you treat this seemingly intricate, complex block of words as a real text instead of just typing to translate it word for word, beat by beat, off the cuff into English? Before we dive into the bizarre English translations, we must first discern and understand exactly what this text actually is. It is not just a sequential order of randomized letters generated by a computer or some fancy artificial intelligence. It is actually a ghost from ancient history that has resurfaced in the digital age. Almost every word of the Lorem Ipsum opus is pulled from a real book you can read today, provided you understand the Latin, of course. It was written in the year 45 BCE by the renowned Roman philosopher and statesman Cicero. The book is called De Finibus Bonorum et Malorum, which roughly translates to On the Ends of Good and Evil. In reality, it would be a serious heavyweight philosophical treatise on the nature of human ethics, pleasure, and pain. Now, fast forward 2,000 years to the 1960s, a typesetting company called Letraset would take the beautiful Latin text of Cicero and it would intentionally hack it to pieces, brutally chopping off prefixes, scrambling the sentences, and stripping away the proper grammar, massively bastardizing a complex and romantic language. And this was by no means accidental, it was almost by design. They wanted graphic designers to be able to showcase visual layouts without their clients getting distracted and bogged down by reading the actual content. In essence, they would create the ultimate placeholder. And because the text was intentionally broken and scrambled decades ago, translating it back into English yields a quite peculiar and strange result. It doesn't read like a story, a poem, or an essay. Instead, it creates a surreal, dreamlike stream of consciousness that is rather hard to discern if you're not a madman. And because the original grammar is entirely gone, a literal modern translation can only look at the individual Latin root words and manage to survive the chopping block. Even the core phrase we all know today, lorem ipsum, is itself a broken fragment of the Latin phrase, de lorem ipsum, which translates to roughly pain itself. When you translate the rest of the text, you get a bizarre, disconnected set of phrases. You can hear references to a vehicle of hatred being crowded on an island of evil, or choosing the jaws of a clinical environment. In that regard, it is a mosaic of Roman philosophy, split up its meaning and put it back together in the wrong order in a rather Frankenstein way. Well, Frankenstein's monster, I guess. Dr. Frankenstein was a human himself and created a monster. So what are the cryptic phrases to watch out for? Well, there are the jaws of the clinical environment, which is a strikingly dystopian phrase born from the literal translation of fossibus, meaning a narrow throat or entryway, mixed with corrupted modern layout terms. The class silent partners to the shores twisted by our marriages in paragraph 4, sounding like a cryptic riddle, but is actually an accidental, highly accurate translation of a line from Virgil's epic poetry, the Aeneid, which would somehow get tangled up in the dummy text over the centuries. And then finally, there's aliquam in classical Latin, which I found to be a very interesting word, roughly translating to a vague quantifier meaning some or any. Yet through the bizarre nature of algorithmic translation, we've consistently rendered this text as defeating. So instead of a simple placeholder, you get lines like defeating was a flight, defeating an element twisted. And then there are also words like elementum, which survive into the modern day because they were also chosen for the actual words we use in everyday conversation. Well, I do anyways, I don't know about you. So ultimately, do let me filibuster all of this to you, and I hope you enjoy my rambling attempts at conversational waffle. At this point, I have no clue what I am doing in the process of writing, collecting, and creating a synthesized effective script. Then again, I suppose the whole nature of this video is in and of itself waffling. It is a lot of words not really saying anything of real substance, which is in that regard the exact nature of lorem ipsum itself anyways. We are just staying true to form and capturing the core idea of it. I suppose something else important that should be noted here as well is that due to the nature of lorem ipsum itself being an imperfect, broken version of Latin, it is by cause and effect not going to result in a coherent and intricate English essay, nor does it even reflect the accurate rules of Latin in terms of its translation. What I am essentially trying to say is that what is upcoming isn't a perfect translation of lorem ipsum, as that is literally impossible due to the way it is set up. In a sense, one cannot build a coherent house out of the same bricks, which have been demolished and shattered by a sledgehammer. When Cicero's work was taken apart by those typesetters of the 1960s, they didn't just seek to give a poor translation of the world's foremost romantic language, but they stripped the very logic of the language itself. In Latin, as any language works, it is entirely dependent on prefixes, suffixes, the case structures, and the way they relate to one another in a grammatical sense itself. With these endings sliced and diced and shuffled like a deck of cards, it would fundamentally alter and change completely the DNA of the text itself, whilst it would still leave behind certain linguistic fossils which we can find today. You can find individual roots floating in a vacuum of space completely untethered from the original intent. That is exactly what makes the nonsensical babble of lorem ipsum itself so strangely and intriguingly fascinating. Because when you strip a language of its connective tissue, removing the tenses, the syntax, the spag, and what was deliberately intended by the author, in this case our dear friend Cicero, what is left behind is a linguistic mirror. What is natural for the brain as well is to attempt to scramble and find a narrative in the chaos and barrage of words it sometimes often hears. Human psychology is hardwired for something which is called apophenia. It is the innate tendency from the brain to perceive what it believes to be, anyways, meaningful connections between unrelated things. It is the same phenomenon which is why we sometimes will see faces in the clouds, shapes in the stars, and hidden messages in things which aren't actually there in reality. As humans, it is our very nature that we cannot tolerate a lack of meaning. So as these paragraphs unfold, you may witness your own mind attempting to stitch these broken fragments back together. Perhaps you will attempt to build a bridge across the gaps, and you might be overcome with a strange sense of deja vu as you begin to connect the dots. Essentially, what we are doing is taking a text that has been engineered to be completely invisible and unregistered to the human eye, and instead we are forcing it to be heard, giving a physical and tangible voice to a digital ghost that has unknowingly haunted our screens for half a century, and we were none the wiser. Therefore, I do hope you bear with me as I now try to navigate and recite a passage from the Lorem Ipsum opus. The rest of this audio will thereby be a bizarre attempt to regurgitate what is essentially gibberish as I read aloud 5 paragraphs generated and retrieved from lipsum.com, alongside the literary translations that have been provided brilliantly by Gemini. So I do apologize, I have used AI, but it was needed to translate the gibberish back into English. So here I would like to invite you in the next 10 minutes or so to listen to the Lorem Ipsum as well as its English translation. So do get comfortable, dim the lights, clear the intelligent noggin of yours. And if you have lasted this long, which I do appreciate, I hope you can listen to the hidden words of what is quite possibly the internet's most famous accident. And thus we begin with the Lorem Ipsum. Lorem ipsum dolor sit emet, consecutor adepicing elite, nunc finibus ligula quis pulvina variis, nunc fossibus nunc sed dignissum convalis morbi maximus ex sit emet lacurit roncus, etiam elifind nisi condimentum integer ut solicitum set, donec ullum corpor sagittus erat, commodo possir nulla pretium at, integer non nunc dignissum vehicula audio cong, volupat lectus, maecenas id elet commodo consequat tellus ac, fugiet magna proin XX lobotis sit amet tellus sed, elefin lobotis ipsum, sed enim magna portitor eget erat vitae tempus malisueda enim integer non erus sed audio finibus molesti, nam finibus sodalis lacus in lobotis, sed molisti sed nunc eget convalis, moris anti congi quis sapien id volupat consequetur metus, donec orci dapibus ad dolor a commodo scelerisque lectus, in hac habitase plate dictumst, fusque ut justo nec tellus placarat aliquam aenien, nec palentesque diam moris facilis eget sem en tempus, aliquam sit amet ullum corpor leo fusque dignissum ligula pulvinar varius fringilla, aenien roncus fringilla torpis at semper nihil malisueda vel, nulla gravida laurit leo ac efficitur risus aiaculis iu. In condimentum ius mod Leo present at ornar nib palentesque volputet sit amet mi egit bibendum facilis ex diam pretium en nec ulum corpor pretium tempor arcu donec blandit nib et quam sodales sed hendreret nib trisque ut sed tellus in tellus porta portitor a tellus facellus maximus sit amet quam volputet vehicula facellis ulum corpor urna a totor labortis dignissum in ac ultricis nissul accumsan tempus libero nunc ultricis ex vitae tortor tempus id egestas nissul ornar fusque placerat sodales orci eget placerat risus iesmed vel present risus orci luctus id ius mod ut ultricis vitae risus enian ornar velet et octor tempus etiam erat mi vivere nec interdum non tinsidunt ac anti aliquam tinsidunt lectus et gravida dapibus erat nunc volutpat libero et convales nunc metus vil enim donec vestibulum tempus sem sit amet aliquam ipsum lectus sit amet praesant fosibus elit as ac turbis iaculis at rutrum nec ornar sed quis magna en quam possure labortis at iu purs nulla facilisi clas aptent tasti sociusco ad liotra torcunt per conubia nostra per inceptus imanios praesant egestas anti ac finibus facilisis arcu sem sodales nulla vitae conge enim a nisi sed risus odio aliquam ac tempus eget semper en totor maecenes nec leo anti morbi totor elit tinsidunt sit amet labortis a congu et libero cras venenatis lacus porus nec felintisque enim porta non integer convales sagittis est a iaculis orci scelerisque et sed fringilla et turpis non fermentum aliquam erat volutpat aliquam ac elementum tortor vestibulum sed massa condimentum rutrum odio iu placerat moris semper justo ultricis portitor mi quis imperdiet vilit moris felis dolor conge vel turpis sed efficitur interdum sem sed facilis dapibus trisque vestibulum non erat en nulla tinsidunt mates ut in diu. That was a mouthful. But here is the following English translation. The main part itself is important. It will be followed by the coaching of the person. Now, the boundaries of the shore are targeted by a varied cushion. Now, the jaws of the clinical environment and are now compressed by the convolution mass. Disease is the greatest maximum from the home of the praise roncus. Even the driver isn't a driver for the element of the condiment. The whole integer number is a continuous prayer until the target arrows were at the door. The convenient placement was no price at. The whole integer is not now clinical. The vehicle of hatred is congregated. The flight of the bed. Maecenas is the element of the convenient layout. The consequence of the land is advance. The effulgent fear is great. The forward out of the out. The layout is at the land, but the driver of the layout itself. But for the great. The gatekeeper needs to be our life, the time of the evil choice for. The whole integer number isn't proud, but hatred is the boundary of the trouble. But the boundaries of the companions of the lake and the layout. But the trouble but now needs the mass. The main before, the crowd who is wise that, the flight of the mass of fear, until the outer, the feast at the pain from, the convenient layout of the text. In this custom of the marketplace it was said. It was done so that just nor the land of the placement of some, and near nor the skin of the diameter. The main facility needs the half in time. The feeding is at the main target of the lion. It was done with the clinical shore varied fringe, and Ian Ronker's fringe ugly, at always the island of the evil choice all. No heavy praise of the line, and the efficient laughter of the sacrifice fall. In the condiment seasoning of the performance of the line present at the adorned property, the skin of the harvest is at my choice of the drink, the pass out of the diameter, the price in or the target, the price of the time of the bow, until the soft property and how the companions, but the henrited property sad. Two, but the land and the land gatekeeper poured from at the land. The past maximum is our how the harvest vehicle. The past target earned from a twisted layout of the clinical in and the ultra value of the island. The layer of time free, now the ultra out of life twisted time. That poverty island adorned. It was done placement of the companions of the corporate needs, the placement of laughter performance all. Present laughter, corporate grief, that performance too. Ultra life laughter. And Ian adorned want and author time. Even was my the life nor the intermediate not, the layout at before, the feeding layout, the text and heavy feast, was now the flight free, and the mass now the fear all four, until the closing time half is at the main item grief is at. Present draws elite and ugly sacrifice, at the road nor adorned, but who is great in how the position layout at for the pure, no facility, the class silent partners to the shores twisted by our marriages, by the begun Hemenios. Present poverty before and boundaries facilities, the bow half companions know, life mass fall from unless. But laughter hatred, the feeding and time needs, always in the twisted. My sinners know the line before. Disease twisted elite, the layout is at the layout from. The crowd and free, tomorrow the sail lake pure. Nor the skin for the gate none. The whole integer number mass arrows is, from a sacrifice corporate and, were fringe and ugly non ferment. The feeding was the flight, the feeding an element twisted, the clothing but the mass condiment seasoning, the road hatred for, the placement main, the main always just furthest, the port my who the command once, the main happy pain, the crowd all ugly but, the efficient intermediate half, but facilities feast sad. The clothing not was in no layout mass, two in the two. And there you have it, about 20 or so minutes, depending on how I've edited this audio, that looks at the internet's most intriguing quirk. And I would hope at the same time pulled absolutely no punches in doing so. What you have just listened to over the course of the latter part of this audio is the background noise of our modern digital lives, finally forced to come into the light. It is, I suppose, a strange thing to realize that beneath the sleek, polished surfaces of our favorite websites and applications lies this bizarre, butchered, fractured ghost of Roman philosophy. It is ultimately a mosaic of ancient pain, isolated words, human ethics, and accidental poetry, which has, as well, been completely stripped of its complex and original meaning and reassembled in the dark like Frankenstein's monster. So as this audio fades out, I would like to invite you to reflect upon what you heard and really thought during said speech. And really, if you felt the true undeniable power of the human lexicon on full display, that even when it is hacked to pieces, brutalized and mutilated beyond all recognition, and turned into this babbled gibberish you just heard, we still desperately reach into the dark to find some human connection. So thanks for listening and sticking around, and if you enjoyed this dive, do consider subscribing and commenting on what you thought of this topic, as well as suggestions for the future.